Hey everyone, welcome to Midnight Mystic Stories. I noticed a lot of you who are watching and enjoying the content aren't subscribed yet. If you love spine-chilling stories, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It really helps the channel grow and helps us keep bringing more of the content you love. And be sure to comment below where you are tuning in from. Thank you and enjoy the video. I need to get this off my chest. It's been years, almost a decade now, and the weight of it is crushing me. It started like a harmless game, a way to escape the boredom of my small-town life, but it morphed into something twisted and cruel. I created a Catfish profile. I was fresh out of high school, working a dead-end job at the local grocery store, and feeling utterly invisible. Everyone I knew was either moving on to college or settling down with their high school sweetheart. I felt stuck, like my life was already mapped out before I even had a chance to explore it. So, I did what any bored, insecure teenager with too much time on their hands would do. I created a fake profile on a dating website. I called myself Sarah. I used pictures of a girl I found on some obscure European modeling site. She was beautiful, effortlessly so, with piercing blue eyes and a smile that could melt glaciers. I crafted a backstory for Sarah, a struggling art student with a passion for photography and a love for indie music. Everything about her was designed to be appealing, interesting, and just a little bit mysterious. Initially, it was just for fun. I'd browse through profiles, send a few flirty messages, and enjoy the ego boost of getting attention from guys who would never give me a second glance in real life. It was a harmless fantasy, a way to pretend to be someone more exciting than I actually was. Then I met him. His name was Mark. He was a few years older than me, a soldier stationed overseas. His profile picture showed a ruggedly handsome guy in uniform, his eyes filled with a mixture of vulnerability and strength. He seemed genuine, kind, and incredibly lonely. We started talking, and something clicked. We messaged each other every day, sharing details about our lives, our hopes, and our fears. He told me about the horrors he'd witnessed in combat, the longing he felt for home, and the dreams he had for the future. I told him about my artistic aspirations, my anxieties about my future, and my deep-seated desire to escape my small town. The more we talked, the deeper I fell into the role of Sarah. I started to believe my own lies, to feel the emotions that Sarah was supposed to be feeling. I found myself looking forward to his messages, craving his attention, and longing to hear his voice. He made me feel seen, understood, and valued in a way that no one ever had before. And he loved Sarah, the beautiful, artistic, and mysterious girl I had created. As our connection deepened, Mark started talking about meeting in person. He said he was planning to come home on leave in a few months and couldn't wait to finally see me. This is where things started to get complicated. The initial thrill of the Catfish wore off, replaced by a gnawing sense of guilt. I knew I couldn't keep up the charade forever, but I was terrified of losing him. I had become so invested in this online relationship, so reliant on Mark's affection, that the thought of confessing the truth was unbearable. So, I did what any coward would do. I continued to lie. I made excuses for why I couldn't video chat. My webcam was broken. My internet connection was too unstable. I was too shy. I dodged every attempt he made to see me, always promising that we would meet as soon as he came home. The closer his leave got, the more frantic I became. I started having nightmares about him discovering the truth, about the pain and betrayal in his eyes. A week before he was scheduled to come home, I finally decided to confess. I typed out a long, heartfelt message, pouring out my guilt and shame. I told him everything, about my boring life, my insecurities, and the desperate need for attention that had led me to create Sarah. I explained that I had never intended for things to go this far, that I was truly sorry for hurting him. I hit send and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. He didn't reply. Hours turned into days, and still nothing. I checked my inbox obsessively, refreshing the page every few minutes, desperately hoping to see his name, but the message remained unread. Finally, after 3 days of agonizing silence, I received a reply. It was short, cold, and filled with a level of anger I had never encountered before. He called me every name imaginable. He accused me of being a cruel, heartless monster who had preyed on his vulnerability and wasted his time. He said he had trusted me, confided in me, and loved me, and I had repaid him by lying to his face. He ended the message by saying he never wanted to hear from me again. I was devastated. I had expected him to be angry, but I hadn't anticipated the depth of his rage. I had hurt him deeply, and I knew I deserved his scorn, but it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. I tried to apologize, to explain myself, but he blocked me. I was completely cut off, left to wallow in my guilt and regret. The experience changed me. I became withdrawn, distrustful, and deeply ashamed of my actions. I stopped using social media altogether, afraid of being recognized or exposed. The memory of Mark's anger haunted me, a constant reminder of the damage I had caused. Over the years, I tried to move on, to build a new life for myself. I went to college, got a job, and even started dating again. But the shadow of Sarah always lingered, a dark secret that I couldn't shake. I know what I did was wrong, deeply wrong. I preyed on someone's loneliness and vulnerability, and I caused him immense pain. I can never undo the damage I did, but I hope that by confessing this, I can at least begin to heal. I don't know if Mark will ever forgive me, but I hope that one day he can find peace. As for me, I will continue to carry this burden, hoping that one day I can learn to forgive myself. The weight of this catfish love story is something I will carry until the day I die. It serves as a reminder of the destructive power of lies and the importance of honesty and empathy in all our relationships. I can only hope that Mark has found happiness and that he has been able to move on from the pain I caused him. It haunts me to this day, and I am truly sorry. Okay, here it is. The truth. The story of how I, a perfectly average, possibly even below average guy, built a digital castle of lies, a shimmering oasis of fabricated perfection, all to snare the attention of a girl online. It's a catfish love story, and it's as ugly as it is pathetic. I was lonely. Pathetically, irrevocably lonely. This was about 8 years ago, back when online dating was still a bit stigmatized, back before everyone and their grandma had a profile on Tinder or Bumble. I was in my early 20s, working a dead-end job in a bookstore, spending my evenings playing video games and wallowing in self-pity. I wasn't hideous, but I wasn't exactly Ryan Reynolds either. My confidence was subterranean, my social skills rusty from disuse. So, when I stumbled across a forum dedicated to a niche hobby I enjoyed, I figured, hey, maybe I can connect with someone here. And I did. Her name was Sarah. She was witty, intelligent, and shared my obscure passion. We started messaging each other, then emailing, then eventually, we moved to Skype. We'd stay up late talking about everything and nothing. I found myself looking forward to our conversations more than anything else in my life. But here's where it gets dark. Sarah wanted to see me. Normal, right? Except I was terrified. My profile picture was old, taken years ago when I was a little slimmer, a little more hopeful. I knew she would be disappointed, and the thought of losing her, of shattering the connection we had built, was unbearable. That's when the seed was planted, a tiny, insidious seed of deception. I started subtly exaggerating things about myself. Little white lies at first. I implied I was more athletic than I was. I hinted at a more exciting social life. I mentioned a promotion at work that was just a hypothetical. But then it escalated. I borrowed photos from an old college acquaintance's Facebook profile. He was handsome, successful, and everything I wasn't. I created a fake backstory, a persona that was essentially an idealized version of myself. I was Jake, now a charming adventurous, outdoorsy guy with a great job and a killer smile. Sarah fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. Our conversations became even more intense. We talked about our dreams, our fears, our hopes for the future. She told me she was falling in love with me with Jake. And I, the real me, basked in the glow of her affection, even though it was built on a foundation of lies. The guilt was there, gnawing at me, but I pushed it down. I told myself I would come clean eventually, once she got to know the real me, once she realized that my personality was what truly mattered. But eventually never came. The longer I kept up the charade, the harder it became to stop. I was trapped in my own web of deceit. We talked about meeting in person. Sarah lived a few states away, but we started planning a trip, a weekend getaway, just the two of us. The panic set in. I made excuses. Work commitments, family emergencies, anything to postpone the inevitable. But Sarah was persistent. She booked the plane tickets. She reserved the hotel room. There was no escape. The day before she was supposed to arrive, I was a mess. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I knew I had to tell her the truth, but the words wouldn't come out. I typed out a confession a dozen times, only to delete it each time, paralyzed by fear. Finally, I did the only thing I could think of. I sent her a message saying I had to cancel. That something had come up. No explanation, just a vague, apologetic excuse. She was devastated, angry, hurt. She demanded answers. I couldn't give them to her. I just shut down. I stopped replying to her messages. I deactivated my fake profile. I disappeared. It was cowardly, I know, but I couldn't face her. I couldn't bear to see the look of disappointment and betrayal in her eyes. Sarah tried to contact me for weeks. She emailed me. She called me, using a number I had foolishly given her early on. She even tried to find me on social media. But I was gone. I vanished without a trace. I changed my phone number, deleted my old email address, and retreated into my shell. I told myself I was doing her a favor, that it was better to cut things off cleanly than to drag her through the pain of a drawn-out confession. But deep down, I knew I was just protecting myself. Years passed. I tried to move on. I even tried dating again, this time as myself. But the shadow of Jake always loomed over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was a fraud, that I didn't deserve happiness. I often wondered what happened to Sarah. Did she ever figure out the truth? Did she hate me? Did she eventually find someone who was real, someone who deserved her? A few months ago, I stumbled across her blog. It was a personal blog where she wrote about her life, her experiences, her struggles. I hesitated, but I couldn't resist the urge to read it. She seemed happy. She was married, had a young child, and was living a fulfilling life. But then I found a post about her online dating experiences, about a guy she met years ago, a guy named Jake, who had broken her heart. She didn't go into much detail, but she described him as charming, intelligent, and incredibly kind. She said she had truly believed she was in love with him. But then, without warning, he had disappeared. She never knew why. She assumed he was married or had a girlfriend. She wrote about how devastating it was, how it had shaken her trust in people. But she also wrote about how she had learned from the experience, how it had made her stronger. She had eventually met her husband, a wonderful man who loved her for who she was. Reading that post was like a punch to the gut. The guilt that I had been carrying for years intensified, becoming almost unbearable. I realized the true extent of the damage I had caused. It wasn't just about breaking her heart. It was about shattering her trust, about making her question her judgment, about poisoning her future relationships. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep living with this secret, this weight on my conscience. I decided to reach out to her. I found her email address through her blog and composed a message. It took me hours to write. I rewrote it a dozen times, struggling to find the right words. I confessed everything. I told her the truth about Jake, about the fake photos, the fabricated backstory, the lies I had told. I explained why I had done it, although that didn't excuse my behavior. I apologized, sincerely and profusely, for the pain I had caused her. I didn't expect her to forgive me. I didn't even expect her to reply. I just needed her to know the truth. I hit send, then closed my laptop, feeling a strange mix of dread and relief. Days turned into weeks. I heard nothing. I assumed she had ignored my message, which was perfectly understandable. But then, one morning, I received an email from her. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was short and to the point. She said she had read my message. She was shocked and hurt, but also relieved. She said she had always wondered what had happened to Jake, and now she finally knew. She appreciated my honesty, but she also said that it didn't change the past. She had moved on. She was happy, and she didn't want to rehash old wounds. She asked me not to contact her again. That was it. No forgiveness, no closure, just a simple request to be left alone. And honestly, that's what I deserved. I haven't contacted her since. I respect her wishes, but I needed to tell someone, anyone. So here it is. My confession. My ugly, pathetic catfish love story. I hope that by sharing it, I can somehow atone for my past actions, and maybe, just maybe, prevent someone else from making the same mistake. Because believe me, the guilt is a heavy burden to carry, and it's a burden you'll carry for a very long time. Okay, here goes nothing. I've been holding on to this for almost a decade, and the weight of it is crushing me. It's a catfish story, a love story, but mostly it's a story about how deeply flawed and messed up I was, and maybe still am. I was fresh out of high school, bored out of my skull in my tiny hometown. My friends had scattered to different colleges, and I was stuck working a dead-end job at the local grocery store, bagging groceries and dreaming of a life that wasn't limited to the same 3 streets. That's when I stumbled onto online dating. It was still kind of a new thing back then, less mainstream than it is now. I created a profile, but honestly, I didn't put much effort into it. I used a blurry picture and a generic bio, mostly just browsing other people's profiles and feeling even more pathetic about my own situation. Then I saw her. Sarah, her profile said. Her picture was stunning, long dark hair, bright green eyes, and a smile that could melt glaciers. She listed her interests as art, music, and poetry. All the things I secretly longed to be interested in, but felt too intimidated to explore. We started chatting, and it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. Sarah was witty, intelligent, and incredibly kind. She seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say, even the mundane details of my grocery store job. We talked for hours every night, sharing our hopes, our fears, and our dreams. She told me she was a struggling artist living in New York City, trying to make it big in the cutthroat world of galleries and exhibitions. I was instantly smitten. There was just one problem. Sarah was complicated. She claimed she was incredibly shy and uncomfortable with video calls or even sending more recent pictures. She said she had been bullied in the past for her appearance and had developed severe anxiety about being seen. I wanted to be understanding, but a little voice in the back of my head kept whispering, "Catfish." But I ignored it. I was so caught up in the fantasy of Sarah, the beautiful, artistic soul who saw something special in me, that I didn't want to risk shattering the illusion. So I kept talking to her, day after day, week after week. We built this incredible virtual relationship, a world of shared jokes, late-night confessions, and unwavering support. I fell completely and utterly in love with her. After a few months, things started to get serious. We talked about meeting in person, but Sarah always had an excuse. A big art show coming up, a family emergency, a sudden illness. I started getting frustrated. I told her I needed to see her, to know that she was real. That's when she dropped the bomb. She confessed that the pictures she had used on her profile weren't actually her. She said they were pictures of a model she had found online, someone who embodied the way she wished she looked. My heart sank. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Everything I thought I knew about Sarah, about our relationship, was suddenly called into question. I wanted to end it right there, to cut my losses and walk away from the whole thing. But then she started pouring her heart out. She told me that she was insecure and afraid, that she never thought anyone would be interested in her if they knew what she really looked like. She said that I was the first person who had ever made her feel truly seen and accepted, and she was terrified of losing me. And God, I was so pathetic. I believed her. I told her it was okay, that her looks didn't matter, that I loved her for her personality. It was a lie, of course. Part of me was still clinging to the image of the beautiful woman in the pictures, hoping that the real Sarah wouldn't be too different. We decided to keep talking, but with a new set of ground rules. She promised to send me a real picture of herself, but she asked me to be patient. She said it would take time for her to feel comfortable enough to show me her true face. I agreed, but the waiting was torture. Every time my phone buzzed, I would jump, hoping it was her picture. Every time I looked at her profile, I would stare at the fake picture, trying to reconcile it with the voice I had come to know and love. Weeks turned into months, and still no picture. But our connection deepened. We talked about everything, even the awkwardness of our situation. She told me about her struggles with body image, her anxieties about being judged, and her deep-seated fear of rejection. I listened, I sympathized, and I fell even harder. Finally, after almost a year of talking, she sent me a picture. It was a selfie, taken in her dimly lit apartment. The woman in the picture was ordinary. She wasn't ugly, but she wasn't the stunning beauty from the profile either. She had kind eyes, a warm smile, and a slightly hesitant expression. My first reaction was disappointment. I won't lie. Part of me felt betrayed, like I had been tricked into falling in love with a lie. But then I looked closer, and I saw something in her eyes that I recognized. The same vulnerability, the same intelligence, the same spark that had drawn me to her in the first place. And I realized that I did love her, not for her looks, but for who she was as a person. I told her that she was beautiful, that her picture didn't change anything. It was another lie. But this time it was a lie I wanted to believe. We made plans to meet in person. I booked a flight to New York City, and we arranged to meet at a coffee shop near her apartment. I was terrified. What if the chemistry wasn't there in person? What if I was still hung up on the fake picture? What if she was completely different than I imagined? When I finally saw her standing outside the coffee shop, my heart skipped a beat. She was even more ordinary in person, but there was something about her that was undeniably captivating. We hugged awkwardly, and then we went inside and talked for hours. It was amazing. The connection we had built online translated perfectly into the real world. We laughed, we shared stories, and we held hands across the table. After that first meeting, we were inseparable. I spent the rest of my vacation with her, exploring New York City, going to art galleries, and falling even deeper in love. When I had to go back home, we promised to make it work. We continued our long-distance relationship, talking every night and visiting each other whenever we could. It was hard, but we were committed to making it work. Then, about 2 years into our relationship, everything fell apart. I was visiting her in New York, and we were having dinner at her apartment. I went to use the bathroom, and I accidentally stumbled upon something that shattered my world. Tucked away in the back of her closet, hidden under a pile of old clothes, was a box filled with pictures. Pictures of her. Pictures that dated back years. Pictures that showed her experimenting with different hairstyles, different makeup looks, different personas. And then I saw it. A picture of her dressed up as the model from her dating profile, posing in the same outfits, replicating the same poses. I felt like I was going to throw up. It all clicked into place. The shyness, the anxiety, the reluctance to show her face. It was all an act. She hadn't just used the model's pictures because she was insecure. She had actively tried to become her. I confronted her about it, and she broke down. She admitted that she had created the fake profile as an experiment, a way to see if she could attract someone with a fabricated identity. She said that she never intended for it to go this far, that she had actually fallen in love with me and was terrified of losing me. I didn't know what to believe. I felt like everything I knew about her, about our relationship, was a lie. I packed my bags and left her apartment, numb with shock and betrayal. We didn't speak for months. I was angry, hurt, and confused. I couldn't understand how someone could be so manipulative, so deceptive. Eventually, she reached out to me. She apologized, begged for forgiveness, and told me that she was getting therapy to deal with her issues. I was hesitant, but I decided to hear her out. We talked for hours, and she explained everything. She had always felt inadequate, like she wasn't good enough, smart enough, or beautiful enough. She had created the fake profile as a way to escape her insecurities, to become someone she thought was worthy of love. I still didn't fully understand, but I could see that she was genuinely remorseful. And despite everything, I still loved her. So I gave her another chance. We started over, slowly and cautiously. She continued going to therapy, and she made a conscious effort to be more honest and transparent with me. It was hard work, but we eventually rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of trust and honesty. We've been together for over a decade now. We're married, we have a beautiful daughter, and we're building a life together. But the scars of the past still linger. I still struggle with trust issues, and I still occasionally wonder if I'm being manipulated. And she still carries the guilt of her deception, knowing that she almost lost me because of her insecurities. I'm not sure if I'll ever fully forgive her for what she did, but I've learned to accept her, flaws and all. And I've learned that love is not always perfect, or easy, or even honest. Sometimes it's messy, complicated, and built on a foundation of lies. But if you're willing to work through the pain and betrayal, it can also be incredibly rewarding. So there it is. My catfish love story. It's not a pretty story, but it's my story. And I needed to finally tell it, to get it off my chest and move on with my life. I hope someone can learn from my mistakes. And I hope that Sarah, wherever she is, knows that I still love her, even after everything. I've been living with this guilt for almost a decade now. 10 years of carrying this secret, this twisted, pathetic lie. It started innocently enough, or at least that's how I justified it to myself back then. I was 22, fresh out of college, and desperately lonely. All my friends were getting married, buying houses, starting their real lives. And I was stuck in my childhood bedroom, working a dead-end job at a bookstore, feeling like I was watching the world move on without me. I spent most of my free time online, scrolling through social media, feeling increasingly inadequate. One night, I stumbled across a profile on a dating site. Jake, it said. His picture showed a ruggedly handsome guy with a kind smile and piercing blue eyes. He listed his interests as hiking, photography, and classic rock, all things I love too. I hesitated for a long time before sending him a message. I knew I wasn't exactly a catch. Overweight, insecure, and lacking in any real accomplishments, I figured a guy like Jake wouldn't give me a second glance. But I was so desperate for connection, for someone to see something worthwhile in me, that I took the chance. To my surprise, Jake responded almost immediately. He said he liked my profile and wanted to get to know me better. We started chatting online, and I was instantly smitten. He was funny, intelligent, and genuinely interested in what I had to say. He seemed to understand me in a way that no one else ever had. But there was a catch. Jake was a soldier stationed in Afghanistan. He said he couldn't share too many details about his location or mission, but he promised to tell me everything when he came home. We spent hours messaging each other every day. I'd wake up eager to see if he'd sent me anything overnight. I'd sneak onto my phone at work to exchange a few quick messages. And at night, I'd stay up late talking to him online, sharing my hopes, dreams, and fears. I was falling hard, and I knew it. But there was this nagging voice in the back of my head, a feeling that something wasn't quite right. His profile picture seemed a little too perfect, almost like it was taken from a magazine. And he always avoided video calls, claiming the internet connection in Afghanistan was too unreliable. So one night, fueled by a mix of loneliness and desperation, I created a fake profile of my own. I found pictures of a girl online, beautiful, athletic, and confident, and used them to create Sarah. I made up a backstory about being a travel blogger who was currently backpacking through Southeast Asia. And then I reached out to Jake. As Sarah, I was everything I wasn't in real life. I was witty, adventurous, and effortlessly cool. Jake was immediately drawn to Sarah. He told her how much he admired her free spirit and her passion for life. He confessed things to her that he hadn't shared with me. Insecurities about his future, fears about returning home from the war. I was living a double life. During the day, I was still talking to Jake as myself, pretending to be the same awkward, insecure girl he'd met online. But at night, I transformed into Sarah, the girl he truly desired. The guilt started to creep in almost immediately. I knew what I was doing was wrong, that I was manipulating Jake and betraying his trust. But I couldn't stop myself. I was addicted to the attention, to the feeling of being desired by someone I admired so much. As the weeks turned into months, my feelings for Jake deepened. I knew I was in love with him, both as myself and as Sarah. And the more I fell in love, the more desperate I became to keep up the charade. I started spending hours crafting the perfect messages, carefully curating my online persona to match Jake's ideal woman. I researched travel destinations, learned about photography techniques, and even started listening to classic rock, all to impress him. I was losing myself in the lie, forgetting who I really was. One day, Jake told me he was coming home. His tour of duty was ending, and he was finally returning to the States. He said he couldn't wait to meet me in person, to finally hold me in his arms. The thought of meeting him terrified me. I knew I couldn't keep up the act forever. He'd eventually see through my facade, and then he'd hate me. But I also couldn't bear the thought of losing him. So I came up with a plan. I told Jake that I had to go on a last-minute business trip, that I wouldn't be able to meet him right away. I said I'd be back in a few weeks, and then we could finally be together. He was disappointed, but he understood. He said he'd wait for me, no matter how long it took. In the meantime, he started dating Sarah. I know it's insane. I was dating him while pretending to be two different people. I used the business trip as an excuse to delay meeting him as myself, while simultaneously arranging dates with him as Sarah. Meeting him as Sarah was surreal. He was even more handsome in person, and he treated me with such tenderness and respect. We went on hikes, explored local parks, and even attended a classic rock concert together. I felt like I was living in a dream, a perfect fantasy that I knew couldn't last. But the guilt was always there, lurking beneath the surface, threatening to destroy everything. One night, after a particularly wonderful date, Jake told Sarah that he loved her. He said she was everything he'd ever wanted in a woman, that he couldn't imagine his life without her. I knew I had to end it. I couldn't let him fall any deeper in love with a lie. So, the next day, I sent Jake a message as Sarah. I said I'd met someone else, that I was moving to another country to start a new life. I told him it was nothing he'd done, that I just wasn't ready for a serious relationship. He was heartbroken. He begged me to reconsider, but I stood my ground. I knew it was the right thing to do, even though it shattered my own heart in the process. Then I disappeared. I deleted the Sarah profile, blocked Jake's number, and cut off all contact with him. I told myself it was the only way to protect him, to prevent him from discovering the truth about who I really was. But I also knew that I was running away from my own guilt, my own shame. I never told Jake the truth. He never found out that Sarah was just a figment of my imagination, a mask I wore to hide my own insecurities. And I've lived with that secret ever since, haunted by the memory of the man I deceived and the love I threw away. I've tried to move on with my life, to build new relationships, but it's always there, this dark cloud hanging over my head. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope that by finally confessing this, I can at least start to heal. Maybe, just maybe, one day I can forgive myself. I don't know if Jake ever found happiness after Sarah broke his heart. I hope he did. He deserved so much better than what I gave him. And I, in turn, deserve to live with the knowledge of what I did. A decade of guilt. It's a long time to carry a lie. It's been 7 years. 7 years since I created Alyssa. 7 years since I destroyed a man named Mark. And 7 years of a guilt that feels like it's slowly crushing me from the inside out. It started innocently enough, or at least that's what I told myself then. I was a lonely, awkward college freshman, drowning in a sea of seemingly confident and effortlessly cool classmates. My dorm room felt like a prison cell, and scrolling through Instagram was an exercise in self-loathing. Everyone looked like they were living their best lives, while I was struggling to make friends and figure out what I wanted to major in. One night, fueled by boredom and a desperate need for connection, I decided to create a fake online persona. I called her Alyssa. I used pictures of a model I found on some obscure European website, someone with striking features and a carefree smile. I crafted a backstory for her, a mix of my own fantasies and things I thought guys would find appealing. She was an aspiring artist, loved hiking and exploring new places, and had a witty sense of humor. I created a profile on a dating website, figuring it would be a harmless way to pass the time. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just some validation and maybe a few laughs. Then Mark messaged Alyssa. He was a few years older than me, working as a software engineer in a city a couple of hours away. His profile picture was a bit blurry, but he seemed kind and genuine in his messages. We started chatting online every day. He was interested in Alyssa's art, asking thoughtful questions about her inspirations and techniques, all of which I made up on the spot. He told me about his work, his hobbies, his dreams of one day opening his own tech startup. The more we talked, the more I realized Mark was exactly the kind of guy I would have been too shy to approach in real life. He was smart, funny, and genuinely seemed to care about what I had to say. And for the first time, I felt like someone was actually listening to me, seeing me, even if it was through the carefully constructed facade of Alyssa. As weeks turned into months, our online relationship deepened. We exchanged long, rambling emails, sharing our hopes, fears, and insecurities. I told him about my struggles in college, my anxieties about the future, and my deep-seated fear of rejection. He listened patiently, offering words of encouragement and support. I even started confiding in him about things I hadn't told my closest friends, things I was too ashamed to admit in real life. The problem was, the more emotionally invested Mark became, the more trapped I felt in my web of lies. He started talking about meeting in person, about driving down to see Alyssa for a weekend. I always had an excuse, of course. I was too busy with school, or I had a family event, or I was feeling under the weather. But I knew I couldn't keep postponing it forever. The truth was, I was terrified. I couldn't bear the thought of him finding out that Alyssa wasn't real, that the girl he had fallen in love with was just a figment of my imagination. I imagined his disappointment, his anger, his utter devastation. The guilt started to creep in, slowly at first, like a nagging little voice in the back of my head. But as time went on, it grew louder and more insistent, a constant reminder of the pain I was inflicting on someone who genuinely cared about me. One night, Mark sent me a message that made my heart sink. He had booked a hotel room in my town for the following weekend. He said he couldn't wait any longer to meet Alyssa, that he had to see her in person. I panicked. I spent the next few hours pacing around my dorm room, trying to figure out a way out of this mess. I considered telling him the truth, confessing everything and begging for his forgiveness. But the fear of rejection was too strong. I couldn't bring myself to shatter his illusions. Instead, I did something even worse. I decided to disappear. I deactivated Alyssa's dating profile and deleted her email account. I blocked Mark's phone number and social media accounts. I vanished without a trace, leaving him with no explanation, no closure, and no way to contact me. I knew it was a cruel and cowardly thing to do, but I convinced myself it was the only way to minimize the damage. I told myself that he would get over it, that he would eventually find someone real, someone who could give him the love and companionship he deserved. But the guilt lingered, festering like a wound that wouldn't heal. For years, I tried to forget about Mark and Alyssa. I focused on my studies, made new friends, and eventually landed a good job after graduation. I even started dating a few guys, but I could never fully commit to a relationship. There was always this nagging feeling that I didn't deserve to be happy, that I was still paying for the sins of my past. Every now and then, I would find myself thinking about Mark. I wondered if he was okay, if he had found someone else, if he ever thought about Alyssa. I even tried searching for him online, but I couldn't find any trace of him. It was like he had disappeared from the face of the earth. 5 years after I cut off contact, I received a message request on Facebook. It was from a woman I didn't recognize. Her profile picture was of her and a man smiling happily together. Something about the man's face seemed familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Hesitantly, I accepted the message request. The woman's name was Sarah. Her message was short and to the point. "Hi," she wrote. "I'm Mark's wife. He told me about you." My heart skipped a beat. My palms started to sweat. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. "I know about Alyssa," she continued, "and I know what you did to him." I didn't know what to say. I was paralyzed with fear and shame. I closed my laptop and curled up in bed, trying to block out the reality of what was happening. But the message kept replaying in my mind, over and over again. The next day, I forced myself to respond. "Sarah," I wrote, "I'm so sorry. I know what I did was wrong. I was young and stupid, and I made a terrible mistake. I never meant to hurt Mark." "You broke his heart," she replied. "He was never the same after you disappeared. It took him years to trust anyone again." I knew she was right. I had caused him immeasurable pain, and I had no way of making it up to him. "I understand if you hate me," I wrote. "I deserve it." "I don't hate you," she said. "I pity you. You must be living with a lot of guilt." She was right about that too. "Mark doesn't know I'm contacting you," she continued. "He doesn't even know I know about Alyssa. I found some old emails on his computer a few years ago. I didn't tell him because I didn't want to upset him." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I want you to know the impact your actions had on his life," she said. "And because I want you to know that he's finally happy now. He has a good life, a loving wife, and a beautiful daughter. He's moved on." Her words brought me a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief that Mark had found happiness, but sorrow that I wasn't the one who could have given it to him. "I'm glad he's happy," I wrote. "He deserves it." "Yes, he does," she replied. "And you need to find your own happiness too. But you can't do that until you forgive yourself for what you did." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I realized that she was right. I had been carrying this burden of guilt for so long, and it was time to let it go. I needed to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made, to learn from them, and to move on with my life. I thanked Sarah for her message and promised to never contact Mark again. Since then, I've been working on forgiving myself. It hasn't been easy, but I'm making progress. I started seeing a therapist who has helped me understand the reasons behind my actions and develop healthier coping mechanisms. I've also been volunteering at a local charity, trying to make a positive impact on the lives of others. I know that what I did to Mark was wrong, and I'll never be able to fully undo the damage I caused. But I can try to make amends by living a better life, by being a kinder and more compassionate person, and by never repeating the mistakes of my past. The guilt may never completely disappear, but it's no longer the all-consuming force it once was. I'm finally starting to heal, to move on, and to build a life that I can be proud of. And maybe, just maybe, one day I'll be able to forgive myself completely. This is hard for me to admit, but I think I ruined someone's life. All because I was lonely and bored. It started, like most things these days, online. I was in my early 20s, fresh out of college, and stuck in a dead-end job in my hometown. All my friends had moved away, chasing careers and relationships, and I felt like I was stagnating. I spent most evenings scrolling through social media, envying their seemingly perfect lives. That's when I stumbled across a picture of a girl named Sarah. She was stunning. Long, flowing brown hair, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that could melt glaciers. Her profile was filled with photos of her hiking, painting, and volunteering at an animal shelter. She seemed like everything I wasn't: adventurous, artistic, and compassionate. I knew instantly that she was way out of my league. So, instead of just admiring from afar, a stupid idea took root in my head. I created a fake profile. I stole pictures from a stock photo website, piecing together an identity for Michael, a handsome, athletic guy who loved the outdoors and had a passion for photography. I crafted a backstory, weaving in details about my own life, like my love for books and my quirky sense of humor, hoping to make him seem more real. It was pathetic, I know, but at the time, it felt like harmless fun. I sent Sarah a friend request, and to my surprise, she accepted. We started chatting online, and I was immediately drawn to her genuine kindness and infectious enthusiasm. She talked about her dreams of traveling the world, her struggles with anxiety, and her deep love for animals. I found myself falling for her, even though I knew it was all a lie. As Michael, I was everything I wished I could be in real life: confident, adventurous, and someone worthy of her attention. We talked every day, sharing our hopes and fears, laughing at silly jokes, and supporting each other through tough times. I became her confidant, her rock, the one person she could always count on. And she became mine. The more I got to know her, the more the guilt gnawed at me. I knew I was leading her on, building a relationship on a foundation of lies, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. I was addicted to the attention, to the feeling of being loved and admired, even if it was for someone who didn't exist. Months turned into a year, and our online relationship deepened. We exchanged countless messages, emails, and even late-night phone calls, using a voice changer app, of course. Sarah started talking about meeting in person. I panicked. I made excuses, citing work obligations, family emergencies, and even a fictional health scare. She was understanding, but I could sense her disappointment. The charade was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. I was constantly worried about slipping up, about revealing my true identity and shattering her heart. I knew I had to end it, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was too selfish, too afraid of losing the connection we had forged. Then one day, Sarah dropped a bombshell. She told me she was planning a surprise visit. She'd saved up enough money for a plane ticket and was coming to see me in a few weeks. My blood ran cold. This was it, the moment of truth. I couldn't stall any longer. I had to confess. I agonized over how to tell her, rehearsing different scenarios in my head. Should I come clean over the phone? Send a long, heartfelt email? Or should I just disappear, leaving her to wonder what happened? In the end, cowardice won out. I chose the easiest option for myself, not for her. I sent her a short, cryptic message saying that something had come up and that I needed to end things. I didn't offer an explanation, just a vague apology and a promise that she was better off without me. Then, I deactivated the Michael profile and vanished from her life. I knew it was cruel, but I couldn't face the thought of seeing the pain and betrayal in her eyes. I told myself that she'd eventually move on, find someone who was real and worthy of her love. But a part of me knew that I'd done irreparable damage. For years, I tried to forget about Sarah. I threw myself into my work, started dating other people, and tried to convince myself that I'd done the right thing. But the guilt lingered, a constant reminder of my deception. Then, a few months ago, I stumbled across an article about catfishing and its devastating effects on victims. I read stories of people who had been scammed out of their life savings, emotionally manipulated, and even driven to suicide by online predators. I saw Sarah's face in every one of those stories. I realized that what I had done wasn't just a harmless prank. I had emotionally abused someone, shattered their trust, and potentially scarred them for life. I started searching for her online, desperate to make amends, to offer some kind of apology, even if she hated me for it. But I couldn't find her. Her social media profiles were gone. Her email address was no longer active, and none of our mutual online friends had heard from her in years. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. I contacted the animal shelter she used to volunteer at, hoping they might have some information. They remembered her fondly, describing her as a kind and dedicated volunteer, but they hadn't seen her in a long time. One of the volunteers mentioned that Sarah had seemed different in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. She was withdrawn, anxious, and had stopped talking about her future plans. The volunteer also mentioned that Sarah had been heartbroken by an online relationship that had suddenly ended. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. It was my fault. I had done this to her. Driven by guilt and desperation, I hired a private investigator to track her down. It took weeks, but they eventually found her. She was living in a small town several states away, working as a waitress at a diner. According to the investigator, she had changed her name and kept to herself, avoiding social media and any kind of online interaction. He also discovered something that broke my heart into a million pieces. After I disappeared, Sarah had suffered a severe mental breakdown. She was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety and spent several months in a psychiatric hospital. She had lost her job, her friends, and her sense of self-worth. It took years of therapy and medication for her to start piecing her life back together. But she was never the same. The bright, bubbly girl I had once known was gone, replaced by a shell of a person, haunted by the ghost of a fake relationship. I know I can't undo what I did. I know I don't deserve her forgiveness. But I need to tell her the truth. I need to take responsibility for my actions and face the consequences, whatever they may be. I'm planning to go to her town, find her, and tell her everything. I'm terrified of what she'll say, of how she'll react. But I owe it to her, and I owe it to myself. I know that this confession won't erase the pain I caused. But maybe, just maybe, it will be the first step towards healing, for both of us. Maybe one day, Sarah will be able to forgive me. But even if she doesn't, I'll carry the weight of my guilt for the rest of my life. A constant reminder of the devastating consequences of my selfish lies. This is my story, a cautionary tale of online deception and the enduring power of guilt. I hope that by sharing it, I can prevent someone else from making the same terrible mistake I did. The truth is, I've been hiding something big, something that could shatter everything I've built in the last few years. It all started with a picture. A ridiculously attractive guy, maybe a year or two older than me, popped up on my suggested friends list on Facebook. Dark hair, piercing blue eyes, a jawline that could cut glass, the whole package. His name was Chris. Now, I wasn't exactly a social media butterfly. I mostly used Facebook to keep up with family and old high school acquaintances. But Chris's profile, it drew me in. He had pictures of himself hiking in the mountains, volunteering at an animal shelter, playing guitar at what looked like open mic nights. He seemed genuine and incredibly hot. I'd been single for a while, nursing a bruised ego after a particularly nasty breakup. So, yeah, maybe I was a little vulnerable. I sent him a friend request. To my surprise, he accepted almost immediately. A few minutes later, a message popped up. "Hey, thanks for the ad. I think I recognize you from some mutual friends. How's it going?" We started chatting. Small talk at first, the weather, our favorite music, what we did for a living. I was working as a freelance graphic designer, mostly doing logos and website mock-ups for small businesses. Chris said he was a paramedic, working long hours and saving lives. It sounded heroic. Over the next few weeks, our conversations deepened. We talked about our dreams, our fears, our families. He told me about his childhood, growing up in a small town, his passion for helping others. I shared my insecurities, my artistic aspirations, my desire for a real connection. He was a good listener, always asking the right questions, offering words of encouragement. He made me feel seen, understood. And the flirting, the flirting was off the charts. He called me beautiful, smart, funny. He told me he couldn't stop thinking about me. I was hooked, completely and utterly hooked. There was just one problem. We lived on opposite sides of the country. He was in Seattle, I was in Atlanta. "It sucks, I know," he said one night when I brought it up. "But I really think we have something special. We can make it work, right?" I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So I did. We started video chatting. At first, it was just a few minutes here and there, when he had a break at the hospital or I was taking a lunch break from work. But soon, it became a daily ritual. We'd talk for hours, laughing, sharing stories, just enjoying each other's company. He always looked exactly like his pictures, maybe a little tired from his demanding job, but always with that same captivating smile. As the months went by, our feelings for each other intensified. We said, "I love you." We made plans to meet. We talked about a future together. He even started looking at job openings in Atlanta. I was in love, head over heels, hopelessly in love with a guy I'd never actually met in person. That should have been my first red flag, but I was too blinded by infatuation to see it. Then came the emergency. Chris called me one night, his voice frantic. "Babe, I need your help. I know this is a lot to ask, but..." He explained that his mother had a sudden heart attack and needed emergency surgery. He was short on cash, and his credit card were maxed out. He needed a few $1,000s to cover the medical bills. "I hate asking you this," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "but you're the only one I can turn to. I promise I'll pay you back as soon as I can." I didn't even hesitate. I transferred the money from my savings account. He thanked me profusely, promising to repay me as soon as his mom was out of the woods. That was the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Over the next year, there were more emergencies. A car accident, a burst pipe in his apartment, a sudden dental bill. Each time, he'd call me, sounding desperate, and I'd send him money. I justified it to myself. He was my boyfriend. I loved him, and he was always so grateful, so reassuring, promising to pay me back as soon as he could. But the repayments never came, and the emergencies kept piling up. I started getting into debt. Credit card bills I couldn't afford. Payday loans with exorbitant interest rates. I was drowning, but I couldn't bring myself to confront him. I was afraid of what he'd say, afraid of losing him. Then one day, I got a message from a woman I didn't recognize on Facebook. "Hi, I saw you're friends with Chris on Facebook. I just wanted to warn you. He's a scammer. He's been doing this to women for years." My blood ran cold. I clicked on her profile. She was a paramedic in Seattle. She had pictures with Chris, the real Chris. Not the guy I'd been talking to for the past 2 years. The real Chris was oblivious. He didn't know anything about me, about the relationship I thought we had. I confronted my Chris, sent him the woman's profile, demanded answers. He denied everything at first, said she was crazy jealous, trying to ruin our relationship. But I pressed him. I kept pushing until he finally cracked. He admitted it. It was all a lie. The pictures, the job, the emergencies, all fabricated. He was a con artist, and I was his latest victim. I was devastated, heartbroken, furious. I wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear. But more than anything, I wanted answers. Who was this person? What kind of monster could do something like this? I spent weeks digging, searching for clues, piecing together fragments of information. I found his real name, David Miller. He was from a small town in Ohio. He had a criminal record, mostly petty theft and fraud. He was a master manipulator, a sociopath who preyed on vulnerable women. I contacted the police, filed a report, but they said there wasn't much they could do. He was operating from overseas, using burner phones and fake accounts. It was almost impossible to track him down. I lost everything. My savings, my credit, my trust in people. But I also gained something. A burning desire for revenge. I couldn't let him get away with this. I spent months plotting, planning, figuring out how to turn the tables on him. I created a fake profile, using a picture of an attractive woman I found online. I gave her a name, Sarah, and I reached out to David. It wasn't hard to reel him in. He was always on the lookout for his next victim. I played the part of a lonely, wealthy woman, looking for love online. I showered him with compliments, shared my deepest secrets, made him feel like he was the only one who understood me. He fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. We started chatting, video calling, building a relationship, just like he had done with me. But this time, I was in control. I learned his patterns, his tactics, his weaknesses. I knew exactly how to manipulate him, how to play on his emotions. And then, the time came to put my plan into action. I told him I was coming to visit him. I booked a flight to his city. He was ecstatic. I knew he was already fantasizing about the money he was going to get from me. But I had a surprise waiting for him. I hired a private investigator. He tracked David's every move, gathered evidence of his fraudulent activities. He even found other women David had scammed. When I arrived in his city, I didn't go to his apartment. I went to the police station. I handed them all the evidence I had gathered. They raided his apartment, arrested him, and charged him with multiple counts of fraud and identity theft. It was over. He was finally going to pay for what he had done. I should have felt relieved, victorious. But I didn't. All I felt was empty. The revenge hadn't brought me the satisfaction I thought it would. It hadn't erased the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation. I was still broken. And now, I have to live with the knowledge that I became just as manipulative, just as deceitful as he was. I may have brought him to justice, but I also lost a part of myself in the process. And that's the secret I've been hiding. The truth is, I'm not the victim I appear to be. I'm also a perpetrator, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself for that. Okay, here goes nothing. I need to confess to being a catfish. I know, it's awful. I've known it's awful for years, but the longer it goes on, the harder it is to stop. It all started during a really low point in my life. I was fresh out of high school, working a dead-end job at a gas station, and feeling completely invisible. I was awkward, insecure, and convinced that no one would ever be interested in me for who I truly was. I spent most of my free time online, scrolling through social media and feeling even worse about myself. Everyone seemed to be living these perfect, exciting lives, and I was just stuck. One night, I stumbled across a profile on a dating site that used pictures of this absolutely stunning woman. She was everything I wasn't: confident, outgoing, adventurous, and unbelievably beautiful. I remember thinking, there's no way someone like that is actually single. Curiosity got the better of me, and I started digging around online. I found more pictures of her on various social media platforms, and something clicked. I don't know why, but I decided to create a fake profile using her images. I told myself it was just a harmless experiment, a way to see what it felt like to be perceived as attractive and desirable. I named the profile Sarah Miller, gave her a generic bio about loving travel and trying new things, and started browsing for potential matches. Almost immediately, my inbox flooded with messages. Guys were showering Sarah with compliments, eager to get to know her. It was intoxicating. For the first time, I felt like I mattered, like I was worthy of attention. One message stood out from the rest. It was from a guy named David. He was funny, intelligent, and genuinely interested in getting to know Sarah beyond her looks. We started messaging back and forth, and soon we were talking every day. He told me about his dreams of becoming a writer, his love for hiking, and his quirky sense of humor. I, as Sarah, told him about my fake adventures, my fake job as a photographer, and my fake passion for exploring the world. The more we talked, the more I fell for him. He was everything I had ever wanted in a partner: kind, compassionate, and genuinely interested in me. Or rather, the person I was pretending to be. I knew it was wrong, that I was building a relationship on a foundation of lies, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. The attention, the validation, and the connection with David were too addictive. Months turned into years. David and Sarah became incredibly close. We shared our deepest fears, our biggest dreams, and our silliest jokes. We spent hours on the phone, talking about everything and nothing. He even started writing short stories, inspired by our conversations. The guilt was always there, nagging at me, but I pushed it down, justifying my actions by telling myself that I would eventually tell him the truth. I kept thinking I could find the perfect moment, the perfect way to explain everything without destroying what we had. Of course, that moment never came. Every time I considered confessing, fear would grip me. What if he hated me? What if he never wanted to speak to me again? What if I ruined his life? The stakes kept getting higher, and the consequences of my actions seemed more and more devastating. Over time, I even started to believe that I could somehow make Sarah real. I started taking online photography courses, hoping to develop the skills I had claimed to possess. I researched travel destinations, immersing myself in the cultures and histories of the places Sarah had supposedly visited. I even started changing my appearance, experimenting with makeup and hairstyles to more closely resemble the woman in the pictures. I know it sounds crazy, but I was desperate to bridge the gap between reality and fiction. David eventually started talking about meeting in person. He lived a few states away, and we had always made excuses to avoid taking our relationship offline. I had claimed to be traveling for work, visiting family, or dealing with some other unforeseen circumstance, but his requests became more frequent and more insistent. He wanted to take Sarah on a weekend getaway, to finally experience the connection we had built online in the real world. I was terrified. I knew I couldn't keep up the charade forever. I considered ghosting him, disappearing from his life without a trace. But the thought of hurting him that way was unbearable. He didn't deserve that. He deserved the truth, no matter how painful it might be. So, I finally decided to confess. I spent weeks crafting the perfect message, rehearsing what I would say, and preparing myself for the inevitable fallout. I planned to tell him everything. How I had created the profile out of insecurity, how I had fallen in love with him, and how deeply sorry I was for deceiving him. But then, something unexpected happened. I received a message from an unknown number. It was a picture of David, standing outside my workplace. The caption read, "I know who you really are." My heart sank. He knew. Somehow, he had figured out the truth, and he was confronting me in the most terrifying way possible. I panicked. I deleted the Sarah profile, deactivated all my social media accounts, and called in sick to work. I spent the next few days hiding in my apartment, terrified to go outside. I kept imagining David showing up at my door, confronting me with anger and disappointment. But he never did. After a week of silence, I received another message. It was from David, but it wasn't the David I knew. It was a different number, a different writing style, and a different tone. "I know you're not Sarah," the message read. "I know you've been lying to me for years, but I also know why you did it. I know you're insecure and lonely, and you just wanted to be loved." The message went on to reveal that David wasn't who he said he was either. He had been using a fake profile as well, pretending to be a successful writer when he was actually a struggling artist working odd jobs. He confessed that he had been drawn to Sarah because she seemed so authentic and genuine, qualities he felt he lacked. He admitted that he had suspected something was off for a while, but he had been too afraid to confront me, fearing that the truth would destroy the connection we had built. The revelation was shocking, but also strangely liberating. We had both been living lies, hiding behind fake personas, and yearning for something real. In a strange twist of fate, our shared deception had brought us together. We started talking, not as Sarah and David, but as ourselves. We shared our real names, our real stories, and our real insecurities. We talked for hours, peeling back the layers of lies and revealing the vulnerable, flawed individuals beneath. It wasn't easy. There was anger, hurt, and a lot of tears. But there was also forgiveness, understanding, and a surprising amount of hope. We decided to meet in person, not as the people we had pretended to be, but as ourselves. It was terrifying, but also incredibly freeing. We spent the weekend talking, laughing, and crying. We explored each other's cities, shared our passions, and confronted our fears. We discovered that, despite the lies, there was a genuine connection between us. We were both flawed, broken people, but we were also capable of love, compassion, and forgiveness. We've been together for 2 years now. It's not always easy. We still struggle with our insecurities and our past mistakes, but we're committed to building a relationship based on honesty, trust, and genuine connection. I still feel guilty about what I did, about the years I spent deceiving David, but I also believe that something good came out of it. We found each other, not in the way we expected, but in a way that was perhaps meant to be. I hope that by sharing my story, I can help others avoid making the same mistakes I did. Catfishing is never okay. It's harmful, deceptive, and ultimately self-destructive, but it's also a reflection of our own insecurities and our longing for connection. If you're struggling with your self-esteem or feeling lonely, please reach out for help. There are people who care about you and want to support you. You don't have to hide behind a fake profile to find love and acceptance. You are worthy of love just as you are. And to David, if you're reading this, thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for seeing past the lies and loving me for who I truly am. You are my best friend, my partner, and my greatest love. I will never stop being grateful for you. I've never told anyone this, not even my closest friends. It's something I've buried deep, convinced it's better left unsaid. But the internet is a strange place, a sort of confessional booth for the anonymous, so maybe I can finally get this off my chest. This is about a catfish, but not just any catfish. This is about the catfish I became, and the love story I completely fabricated. It started, like most things these days, with boredom. I was 22, fresh out of college with a useless degree in philosophy and even more useless prospects. Living back in my childhood bedroom, applying for jobs I didn't want, and generally feeling like a failure. My social life was non-existent. Most of my friends had moved away, and I was too broke to do much anyway. So, naturally, I turned to the internet. I spent hours scrolling through social media, envying the seemingly perfect lives of strangers. One night, I stumbled upon this online forum dedicated to a particular genre of fantasy novels. I'd always been a reader, so I lurked for a while, enjoying the discussions and debates. Eventually, I decided to create an account and join in. I didn't want to use my real name or picture, though. I was feeling insecure and didn't want anyone judging me based on my appearance or personal life. So, I created a persona. I called myself Anya, and I used a picture of this stunning model I found on some obscure European website. Anya was everything I wasn't: confident, outgoing, adventurous, and, of course, incredibly beautiful. I crafted a whole backstory for her. She was a freelance photographer, traveling the world and capturing stunning landscapes. She had a witty sense of humor and a passion for obscure literature. I knew it was wrong, but it was also incredibly liberating. Behind the mask of Anya, I could be anyone I wanted to be. I started posting regularly on the forum, and people immediately responded to Anya. They loved her insights, her humor, her captivating photos, which, of course, weren't mine. I felt like I was finally being seen and appreciated, even if it was based on a lie. Then I met him. His username was Lysander, and he was everything Anya, and, let's be honest, I found attractive. He was intelligent, articulate, and had a dry wit that matched Anya's perfectly. We started private messaging, discussing our favorite books, sharing our thoughts on the world, and just generally getting to know each other. It was exhilarating. I found myself looking forward to our conversations more than anything else. I'd spend hours crafting the perfect responses, making sure Anya was witty, insightful, and engaging. Lysander seemed to be falling for Anya, and, truth be told, I was falling for him too. But there was a problem, a huge, glaring problem. I wasn't Anya. I was just some loser living in my mom's basement, pretending to be someone I wasn't. I knew I had to come clean, but I was terrified. What if Lysander hated the real me? What if he was disgusted by my deception? I couldn't bear the thought of losing him. So I kept the lie going. We talked every day, sometimes for hours. We shared our hopes, our dreams, our fears. He told me about his struggles with his family, his passion for writing, his desire to travel the world. I, as Anya, listened attentively, offering support and encouragement. He started calling me his soulmate, his other half. He said he'd never felt this way about anyone before. And I knew, deep down, that I was leading him on a path to heartbreak. The pressure was immense. I started having panic attacks, convinced that the truth would come out and ruin everything. I considered deleting the Anya account and disappearing completely, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was addicted to the attention, the validation, the feeling of being loved. One day, Lysander suggested we meet in person. He lived in another state, but he said he was willing to travel to see me. My heart stopped. This was it, the moment of truth. I stammered, making excuses about my busy schedule, my travel plans, anything to avoid meeting him. He seemed disappointed but understanding. He said he was willing to wait, that he knew our connection was worth it. That's when I realized how truly awful I was being. I was stringing him along, knowing that the real me could never live up to the image of Anya he had in his head. I had to end it. I wrote him a long, tearful message, explaining that I wasn't who he thought I was. I told him the truth about my real life, my insecurities, my reasons for creating Anya. I apologized for lying to him, for leading him on, for breaking his heart. I hit send and immediately deactivated the Anya account. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, followed by an even bigger wave of guilt and shame. I spent the next few days holed up in my room, waiting for Lysander's response. I imagined all sorts of scenarios: anger, betrayal, disgust. But I heard nothing. He never replied. A week later, I created a new, anonymous account on the forum and searched for Lysander's username. His account was gone. He had deleted it. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he was angry, hurt, or just wanted to forget about Anya and move on. I hope he found someone real, someone who could love him for who they truly were. I often wonder if he ever thinks about Anya, the girl he thought he knew and loved. I wonder if he hates me. I deserve it if he does. It's been 5 years since then. I've moved out of my mom's house, gotten a decent job, and started building a real life for myself. I've even started dating, but I'm always hesitant to open up, afraid that I'll repeat the same mistakes. The guilt of what I did still haunts me. I know I can never fully undo the damage I caused. All I can do is try to be a better person, to be honest and authentic in my relationships, and to never, ever catfish anyone again. Telling this story doesn't erase the past, but it does feel like a weight has been lifted. Maybe, just maybe, I can start to forgive myself. Something for nearly 7 years now, something that makes my skin crawl every time I think about it. It all started with a profile picture. A girl, maybe 22, with long, sun-streaked blonde hair and eyes the color of the summer sky, smiling against the backdrop of what looked like a Malibu sunset. Sunshine Sarah 89. Her handle read. I was 24, freshly heartbroken after a messy breakup, and desperately seeking some kind of connection, some kind of validation in the cold, anonymous landscape of online dating. So I swipe right. Sarah and I matched almost instantly. Her opening message was simple, playful. Hey there. Your profile says you're a musician. Tell me more. And just like that, I was hooked. We started messaging back and forth constantly. She was witty, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. We talked about my band, my dreams of making it big, my favorite albums. She shared her own aspirations. Wanted to be a photographer, travel the world, maybe open a small art gallery someday. It felt like we were kindred spirits, two lost souls, finding each other in the digital wilderness. Within a week, we moved from the dating app to texting. Soon, we were talking on the phone every night, sometimes for hours. Sarah had this infectious laugh that could make even the most mundane story sound hilarious. She listened intently when I talked about my insecurities, my fears, my past. She was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. Beautiful, intelligent, supportive, and seemingly head over heels for me. There was just one problem. We never met in person. I suggested it early on, of course. We should grab coffee, I said, or maybe catch a movie. But Sarah always had an excuse. She was busy with work. She was traveling to visit family. She wasn't feeling well. At first, I was understanding. I figured she was just cautious, maybe a little shy. But as the weeks turned into months, her reluctance to meet became increasingly frustrating. I started to get suspicious. I confronted her about it. Sarah, I really like you, I said during one of our late-night phone calls. But I can't keep doing this if we're never going to meet. It feels like you're hiding something. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I am, she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. It's complicated. She went on to explain that she had a rare medical condition that made her extremely self-conscious about her appearance. She was worried I wouldn't be attracted to her if I saw her in person. It was a long, elaborate story, filled with medical jargon and emotional vulnerability. And against my better judgment, I believed it. I felt terrible for her. I told her that her appearance didn't matter to me, that I cared about her personality, her mind, her heart. I told her I would be patient, that I would wait until she was ready. And I did. We continued our relationship online, building an intense emotional connection without ever laying eyes on each other. We exchanged photos, or rather, she exchanged photos. I sent her plenty of pictures of myself, but she only sent a handful, always carefully posed and filtered. I never saw her in natural light, never saw her without makeup, but I convinced myself that it was okay. That love was about more than just physical attraction. This went on for 2 years. 2 years of late-night phone calls, heartfelt text messages, and carefully curated online interactions. 2 years of excuses and half-truths. 2 years of slowly eroding my own self-respect. Then, one day, I received a message from an unknown number. I think you should know the truth about Sarah. It read. Attached was a link to a social media profile. The profile belonged to a woman named Michael. He was a man in his late 30s, with a receding hairline, a slight paunch, and the same piercing blue eyes as Sunshine Sarah 89. The profile was filled with pictures of Michael, his friends, his family, his ordinary, unremarkable life. It took me a while to process what I was seeing. The beautiful blonde girl, the aspiring photographer, the woman I had fallen in love with, she was a lie. A complete fabrication. Michael had created this elaborate persona to catfish me, to manipulate me, to extract emotional validation from me. I felt a wave of emotions wash over me: disbelief, anger, betrayal, and a profound sense of humiliation. I called Sarah, my hand shaking as I dialed her number. She answered on the third ring, her voice as sweet and innocent as ever. "Hey, baby," she said. "How was your day?" "Who the hell is Michael?" I spat out, my voice trembling with rage. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then a nervous laugh. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "Don't lie to me," I screamed. "I know everything. I saw the profile. I know you're not Sarah. You're Michael." She hung up. I tried calling her back, but my number was blocked. I tried messaging her on the dating app, but my account had been blocked there too. She had vanished, leaving me with nothing but a shattered heart and a mountain of unanswered questions. I spent the next few days in a daze, replaying every conversation, every text message, every phone call in my head, searching for clues I had missed, red flags I had ignored. I realized that there were so many things that didn't add up, so many inconsistencies in her stories. But I had been so blinded by my own loneliness, so desperate for connection, that I had chosen to believe the lie. I felt like an idiot, a gullible, pathetic idiot. After a few weeks, the anger started to subside, replaced by a deep, gnawing sadness. I mourned the loss of Sarah, the woman I thought I knew, even though she had never existed in the first place. I also mourned the loss of my own innocence, my own naivete. I had learned a harsh lesson about the dangers of online relationships, about the lengths people will go to in order to deceive and manipulate others. I wanted to report Michael to the police, but I was too ashamed. The thought of explaining the whole story to a stranger, of admitting how easily I had been duped, was too much to bear. So I kept it to myself, burying the pain and the humiliation deep inside. Over the years, I've tried to move on, to forget about Sarah, to rebuild my trust in others. I've had other relationships, both online and in real life, but I've never been able to shake the feeling that I'm being watched, that someone is lurking in the shadows, waiting to exploit my vulnerability. And that's the secret I've been hiding. The fear that I'll never be able to truly trust anyone again. The fear that I'm still, in some small way, in love with a lie. But what happened next is something that to this day shakes me to my core. About a year after the whole Sarah/Michael debacle, I received a package in the mail. It was a small, unmarked box. Inside, nestled in a bed of tissue paper, was a single photograph. It was a picture of me, taken from across the street, as I was walking my dog in the park. On the back of the photo, scrawled in messy handwriting, was a single word: always. I froze. A cold wave of dread washed over me. This wasn't just a random act of cruelty. This was a deliberate act of stalking, a chilling reminder that Michael was still out there, watching me, maybe even closer than I thought. I immediately called the police, finally overcoming my shame and telling them the whole story. They took the threat seriously, launching an investigation and advising me to take extra precautions. I installed security cameras around my apartment, changed my phone number, and avoided going out alone at night. For months, I lived in a state of constant anxiety, jumping at every shadow, afraid to answer the phone. The police eventually tracked down Michael, but they couldn't arrest him for stalking. They said there wasn't enough evidence to prove that he had sent a photograph, and even if they could, the legal penalties for online harassment were minimal. They issued him a... This is embarrassing, to say the least, and I haven't told a soul. Not my best friend, not my therapist. Yes, I go to therapy now, ironic, right? Nobody. It's about this whole online relationship I had a few years back. And it wasn't just a relationship. It was like the deepest, most intense connection I thought I'd ever experience. Except it was all a lie. A catfish love story. The kind you read about online, but it happened to me. I was going through a really rough patch. My long-term girlfriend had just dumped me. I lost my job, and I felt completely isolated. I spent most of my time holed up in my apartment, scrolling through social media, feeling sorry for myself. That's when I stumbled upon this photography account on Instagram. The photos were incredible: landscapes, portraits, street scenes, all with this raw, emotional quality. I started following the account, and the photographer, who went by the name Alex, started following me back. Alex's profile was pretty bare. Just a few photos of the artwork, no personal information, no face. But I was intrigued by the work, and I started leaving comments. Alex responded, and soon we were exchanging DMs about photography, art, and life in general. It turned out we had a lot in common. We both loved classic literature, indie music, and had a similar cynical outlook on the world. Alex was intelligent, witty, and incredibly insightful. They asked me about my breakup, my job loss, and listened with genuine empathy. I found myself opening up to Alex in ways I never had with anyone else. Maybe it was the anonymity of the internet, or maybe it was just the right timing, but I felt like I could tell Alex anything. After a few weeks of messaging, we started talking on the phone. Alex had this amazing voice, deep, soothing, with a slight accent that I couldn't quite place. They were careful not to reveal too much personal information, said they valued their privacy, and had been burned by online relationships in the past. I understood. I was cautious too. But the more we talked, the more I fell for Alex. We would spend hours on the phone, talking about everything and nothing. I felt a connection with Alex that I had never felt with anyone before. It was like we were soulmates, destined to find each other, even across the digital divide. After a few months, we started video chatting. This is where things got complicated. Alex always had an excuse for why the camera wasn't working properly. Bad lighting, glitchy internet, technical difficulties. It was always something. But I was so invested in the relationship that I brushed it off. I convinced myself that Alex was just shy or insecure about their appearance. One day, Alex finally agreed to a video call where I could at least see them. But when the call connected, the image was blurry and pixelated. I could barely make out a face, just a vague outline of a person with dark hair and glasses. Alex said their camera was old and the lighting was bad, but they promised to upgrade it soon. I wanted to believe them. I really did. Over time, the blurry video calls became a regular thing. I started to accept it as just part of our relationship. I was so infatuated with Alex's personality, their mind, their soul, that I didn't care what they looked like. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Then came the grand plan. Alex lived on the other side of the country, in a small town I'd never heard of. We started making plans to meet in person. I was ecstatic. Finally, I would get to see Alex for real, to hold them, to kiss them. We booked flights, reserved a cozy cabin in the mountains halfway between our cities, and counted down the days. As the date approached, I started getting nervous. What if the connection wasn't the same in person? What if Alex didn't like me? What if Alex wasn't who they said they were? I pushed those thoughts aside. I had to trust Alex. I had to believe that this was real. The day finally arrived. I flew to the agreed-upon airport and waited anxiously at the gate, my heart pounding in my chest. I scanned the crowd, looking for the blurry face I'd seen on video. But Alex wasn't there. I texted, I called, but got no response. After an hour of waiting, I started to panic. Maybe their flight was delayed. Maybe something happened. I kept checking my phone, refreshing my email, clinging to the hope that there was a reasonable explanation. Finally, after 3 agonizing hours, I received a text message from Alex. "I can't do this," it read. "I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." I was devastated, confused, heartbroken. I tried to call again, but the number was disconnected. I went back to the cabin alone, spent the night crying, and flew home the next morning, feeling like the biggest idiot in the world. For weeks, I tried to figure out what had happened. I scoured the internet for clues, desperate to understand why Alex had ghosted me. That's when I stumbled upon a reverse image search website. On a whim, I uploaded one of the photos from Alex's Instagram account. And that's when my world shattered. The photo wasn't Alex's. It was from a professional photographer's website, taken years ago. I uploaded more photos from the account, and they all came back to different sources: stock photo sites, travel blogs, random social media profiles. Alex wasn't a photographer. Alex wasn't who they said they were. Alex wasn't even real. I had been catfished. I felt like an idiot, naive, betrayed. But more than that, I was heartbroken. I had fallen in love with a figment of my imagination, a persona created by someone hiding behind a screen. The real kicker? After doing some serious digging, I discovered who was behind the Alex profile. It was someone I knew, someone from my past. A girl I went to high school with, Sarah. Sarah was always kind of an outcast, quiet, shy, and a bit awkward. I wasn't particularly nice to her in high school. I wasn't mean, but I definitely wasn't friendly. I hung out with a popular crowd, and she was not. Apparently, she had harbored a secret crush on me for years. And when she saw me posting about my breakup online, she saw an opportunity. She created the Alex persona to get closer to me, to experience what it was like to be loved by me, even if it was based on a lie. I confronted her about it. She admitted everything. She said she was sorry, that she never meant to hurt me, but that she couldn't help herself. She was lonely, insecure, and obsessed with me. I was furious, hurt, disgusted. I wanted to scream, to yell, to make her pay for what she had done. But I also felt a strange sense of pity for her. She was clearly deeply troubled, and her actions were a cry for help. I told her that what she did was wrong, that she had violated my trust and caused me immense pain. I told her that I never wanted to see or hear from her again, and I walked away. That was years ago. I haven't spoken to Sarah since, but the experience still haunts me. I still wonder why she did it. I still question my own judgment. How could I have been so blind, so gullible, so desperate for love that I fell for such an obvious scam? I've since moved on. I've met new people, had new relationships, but I'm always cautious, always a little bit suspicious. It's hard to trust people after being catfished like that. It's hard to believe that anyone could truly love you for who you are, when you know that someone out there was capable of creating an entire fake identity just to get your attention. And that's my confession, my catfish love story. It's embarrassing, it's painful, and it's something I'll probably carry with me for the rest of my life. I just hope that by sharing it, I can finally start to heal. And maybe, just maybe, someone else who's been through something similar will know that they're not alone. I've been holding on to this for almost a decade, and the weight of it is crushing me. I need to tell someone, even if it's just a bunch of anonymous readers on the internet. I need to confess my biggest, most shameful secret. I was a catfish. Not just any catfish, but one of the worst kinds, a manipulator who preyed on someone's loneliness and vulnerability for my own twisted satisfaction. It started back in college. I was insecure, to put it mildly, overweight, socially awkward, and perpetually single. I saw all the other girls effortlessly attracting guys, going on dates, and having these whirlwind romances. Meanwhile, I was spending my Friday nights alone in my dorm room, scrolling through Facebook and feeling sorry for myself. One night, fueled by too much cheap beer and self-pity, I stumbled across a profile that caught my eye. It was a guy named Ryan, and he was gorgeous. Think classic all-American, blonde hair, blue eyes, a chiseled jawline. His profile was filled with pictures of him hiking, playing sports, and generally living this perfect, adventurous life. Of course, I immediately assumed he was out of my league. But something about his bio, a quote about overcoming adversity, resonated with me. On a whim, I sent him a friend request. To my surprise, he accepted. We started chatting online, and I quickly learned that Ryan was everything I wasn't: confident, outgoing, and popular. He was also incredibly kind and attentive. He asked me about my day, listened to my problems, and always had a witty comment to make me laugh. The only catch was that Ryan lived in another state. He was a student at a university halfway across the country. But that didn't stop us from developing a connection. We spent hours messaging each other, sharing our hopes, dreams, and fears. I started looking forward to our conversations more than anything else. He made me feel seen, heard, and valued in a way that no one ever had before. There was just one small problem. I wasn't being entirely honest with Ryan. Okay, that's a massive understatement. I was living a complete lie. I wasn't using my real name. I wasn't using my real pictures. I had created a fake persona, a beautiful, athletic, artistic girl named Sarah. I stole photos from some random model I found online and used them to create my profile. I pretended to have all these exciting hobbies and interests that I knew Ryan would find attractive. I knew it was wrong. Deep down, I knew I was hurting him myself, but I couldn't stop. I was addicted to the attention, the validation, and the feeling of being someone I wasn't. Ryan and I talked about everything. We bonded over our shared love of music, our frustrations with our families, and our dreams for the future. We even started exchanging romantic messages. He called me beautiful, smart, and amazing. He told me he was falling in love with me. I should have ended it then. I should have come clean and confessed the truth. But I was too selfish. I didn't want to lose him. I wanted to keep living in this fantasy world where I was someone desirable and loved. As our relationship deepened, Ryan started suggesting that we meet in person. I always came up with excuses. I was too busy with school. I didn't have enough money for a plane ticket. I was afraid of flying. The excuses became increasingly elaborate and ridiculous, but Ryan always accepted them. He was so understanding, so patient, so trusting. That's what made it even worse. The more he cared about me, the more guilty I felt. But still, I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. Months turned into years. Ryan and I continued our online relationship, never meeting in person, never even talking on the phone. It was a bizarre, surreal existence. I knew it couldn't last forever, but I kept pushing the inevitable confrontation further and further into the future. Then, one day, Ryan told me he was planning a trip to my state. He said he wanted to surprise me. He wanted to finally meet me in person. Panic set in. I knew this was it. My lie was about to be exposed. I spent days agonizing over what to do. Should I confess everything and risk losing him? Or should I continue the charade and hope for some miracle that would allow me to avoid meeting him? In the end, I chickened out. I couldn't face him. I couldn't bear the thought of seeing the disappointment and betrayal in his eyes. So, I did the most cowardly thing imaginable. I disappeared. I deleted my fake profile. I changed my phone number. I cut off all contact with Ryan. I vanished without a trace. I know it was cruel. I know it was unforgivable. But I couldn't think of any other way to escape the situation. For years, I tried to bury the guilt and shame. I told myself that Ryan was better off without me, that I had saved him from a lifetime of lies and deception. But the truth is, I was just trying to make myself feel better. I knew I had hurt him deeply. I had broken his heart, and I had done it all for my own selfish reasons. Over time, I started to move on with my life. I lost weight, gained confidence, and eventually found a real relationship with a wonderful man. We got married last year, and we're expecting our first child. On the surface, I have everything I ever wanted, but underneath it all, the guilt is still there. It lingers in the back of my mind, a constant reminder of the terrible thing I did to Ryan. I often wonder what happened to him. Did he ever figure out the truth? Did he ever find someone else? Did he ever forgive me? I know I don't deserve his forgiveness, but I hope someday he can find peace. I'm writing this confession now because I can't carry this burden any longer. I need to acknowledge my past mistakes and try to make amends, even if it's just in some small way. I know this won't undo the damage I caused, but maybe, just maybe, it will help me start to heal. If you're reading this, Ryan, I'm truly sorry. I was young, insecure, and incredibly foolish. I made a terrible mistake, and I've regretted it every day since. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me, even if I don't deserve it. And to anyone else who's considering catfishing someone, please, don't do it. It's not worth the pain and suffering you'll cause, both to the other person and to yourself. It's a lie that will eventually consume you, and the guilt will haunt you for years to come. Learn from my mistakes. Be honest. Be authentic. Be yourself. It's the only way to find true happiness and genuine connection. And now, after all these years, I can finally say it. My name is not Sarah, and I am a former catfish. I hope this confession can bring some comfort to anyone who has been hurt by catfishing, and I hope it can serve as a warning to those who are considering engaging in this harmful behavior. The internet can be a wonderful place for connection, but it can also be a breeding ground for deceit. Let's all strive to be more honest, compassionate, and authentic in our online interactions. That's the least we can do to honor the victims of catfishing and prevent future harm. The end. Okay, here goes nothing. This is a story I've been burying for over a decade, a story riddled with shame and regret. It's about a time I pretended to be someone I wasn't, a catfish love story where I was the one doing the reeling, and the guilt of it has been a constant companion ever since. I was in my early 20s, fresh out of college, and hopelessly lost. Everyone around me seemed to have their lives figured out, landing dream jobs, getting engaged, buying houses. Meanwhile, I was stuck in a dead-end retail job, living in my parents' basement, and feeling utterly invisible. Dating wasn't going well. I was awkward, insecure, and spent most dates trying to be someone I thought the other person wanted me to be. It was exhausting and, unsurprisingly, unsuccessful. I saw these girls on dating apps that looked perfect, and I would never consider talking to them because of my own insecurities. I retreated into the online world, seeking solace in forums and online games. That's where I met Sarah. She was everything I wasn't: confident, witty, artistic, and incredibly beautiful. at least according to the pictures she posted on her profile. We connected on a forum dedicated to indie music. I loved her taste, her insightful comments, and the way she could articulate feelings I'd never been able to express myself. We started messaging each other privately, and the conversations flowed effortlessly. It felt like I'd finally found someone who truly understood me, someone who saw past my awkward exterior. Except, I wasn't being entirely honest with her. I used a picture that was a little older, where I looked thinner and had better hair. I exaggerated my interests, pretending to be more knowledgeable about art and film than I actually was. I even embellished my job description, making it sound more creative and fulfilling than it really was. It wasn't a conscious decision to deceive her, at least not at first. It was more like a series of small adjustments, little white lies designed to make myself seem more appealing. I told myself that once she got to know the real me, she'd understand. But the more we talked, the deeper I dug myself into the hole. Sarah lived a few states away, which made it easier to maintain the facade. We talked for hours every night, sharing our hopes, dreams, and fears. I fell hard. She became my confidant, my best friend, and the object of my deepest affection. I knew it was crazy to feel so strongly for someone I'd never met in person, someone who only knew a curated version of myself, but I couldn't help it. After a few months, Sarah suggested we video chat. My heart leaped with excitement, but then dread washed over me. How could I possibly explain the discrepancies between the person she thought I was and the reality? I panicked and made up an excuse. My webcam was broken. The internet connection was unreliable. Anything to avoid showing her my face. She was understanding, but I could sense a flicker of disappointment in her messages. I knew I couldn't keep avoiding her forever. The guilt was mounting, and the fear of her finding out the truth was paralyzing. That's when I did something truly awful. Instead of confessing my deception, I doubled down. I created a fake online persona, a completely fabricated version of myself that was everything I thought Sarah wanted in a partner. I stole pictures from a model's Instagram account, crafted a compelling backstory, and even created a fake social media presence to support the illusion. Alex, as I called him, was a successful musician, a world traveler, and a passionate advocate for social justice. He was everything I wasn't and everything Sarah seemed to admire. Using a separate email address and a voice changer, I started communicating with Sarah as Alex. I told her I'd stumbled across her profile on a dating site and was immediately drawn to her intelligence and creativity. To my shock and horror, she responded. She was intrigued by Alex, flattered by his attention, and soon, she was confiding in him just as she had with me. I was now juggling two online relationships with the same woman, both built on lies. It was a twisted, manipulative game, and I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. I was addicted to the attention, to the validation, to the feeling of being loved and desired, even if it was based on a complete fabrication. The situation spiraled out of control. Sarah started comparing me to Alex, pointing out his admirable qualities and subtly suggesting that I could learn from him. It was excruciating to hear her praise a fictional version of myself while simultaneously criticizing the real me. I knew I had to end it, but I was terrified of losing her completely. I decided to stage a dramatic exit for Alex. I told Sarah that he was going on a long-term humanitarian mission to a remote part of the world, where he wouldn't have access to internet or communication. She was sad to see him go, but she understood and wished him well. With Alex out of the picture, I hoped I could salvage my relationship with Sarah as myself. I confessed to some of my earlier exaggerations, admitting that I'd embellished my job and my interests, but I stopped short of revealing the Alex charade. She was hurt and disappointed, but she forgave me. She said she still cared about me, but that trust had been broken. We continued talking, but the spark was gone. The conversations felt forced, and the intimacy had vanished. A few weeks later, she told me she couldn't do it anymore. The lies had poisoned our connection, and she needed to move on. I was devastated. I'd lost the woman I loved, and I knew I deserved it. But the guilt and shame didn't end there. They lingered, festering in my mind for years to come. I avoided online dating for a long time, afraid of repeating my mistakes. I struggled to form meaningful connections with people, haunted by the knowledge that I was capable of such profound deception. I carried the secret of Alex with me, a dark stain on my conscience. The thought of Sarah ever finding out the truth filled me with dread. I imagined her anger, her betrayal, her complete and utter disgust. Several years ago, I stumbled across Sarah's Facebook profile. She was married, had 2 beautiful children, and seemed genuinely happy. I resisted the urge to reach out, knowing that contacting her would only reopen old wounds and inflict more pain. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she deserved to know the truth. A few weeks ago, I wrote her a letter, a long, rambling, heartfelt confession detailing every lie, every manipulation, every act of deception. I explained how sorry I was, how ashamed I felt, and how much I regretted hurting her. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't expect a response. I simply needed to unburden myself, to finally take responsibility for my actions. I mailed the letter and waited. The anxiety was almost unbearable. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything. Finally, a week later, I received an email from Sarah. It was short and to the point. She wrote that she'd received my letter and that she was still processing everything. She said she was hurt and angry, but also somewhat relieved to finally understand what had happened. She didn't offer forgiveness, but she did say that she appreciated my honesty. That was it. No closure, no reconciliation, just a brief acknowledgement of my confession. And honestly, that's all I deserved. I don't know if Sarah will ever truly forgive me for what I did. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive myself. But I do know that I can no longer carry this burden in silence. I needed to tell my story, to own up to my mistakes, and to hope that, in some small way, my confession might bring some measure of peace, both to her and to myself. I will always regret my actions, and I can only hope I haven't ruined her life. It's time I finally told the truth about Sarah, about how I became Sarah, and how a simple, stupid decision snowballed into something that ruined a man's life, and honestly, kind of ruined mine too. I was 19, bored out of my skull, and working a dead-end summer job at a gas station in my small, rural hometown. Nothing ever happened. The highlight of my day was when Mrs. Henderson came in for her daily lottery ticket. I was restless. I craved excitement, connection, anything to break the monotony. I spent hours scrolling through social media, envying the lives of others. One night, I stumbled across this online forum for people who loved cats. I've always been a cat person, so I joined. Started posting pictures of my fluffy Persian, Mr. Bigglesworth. And then I saw him, Liam. He posted a picture of his Maine Coon, Ragnar, a magnificent beast with piercing blue eyes. He lived in another state, a few hours away by car. His profile said he was 22, a graphic designer, and loved hiking and craft beer. He seemed cool, way cooler than anyone I knew in my town. I messaged him something witty about Ragnar's majestic mane. He responded. We started chatting. About cats, of course, but then about music, movies, our dreams, our fears. He was funny, intelligent, and surprisingly vulnerable. He told me about his struggles with anxiety, his passion for art, and his deep loneliness. And I, starved for attention and eager to impress, started embellishing, exaggerating my own artistic abilities, claiming to be a passionate hiker, I hated hiking, and mirroring his interests to create this perfect, idealized version of myself. Then came the picture request. He wanted to see who he was talking to. This is where it went wrong. This is where I should have stopped. But I didn't. I was too invested. I'd built this persona, this connection. The thought of admitting I was just a bored gas station attendant was terrifying. So I panicked. I Googled attractive girl with cats and found a picture of a girl named Sarah. She was stunning. Long, dark hair, piercing green eyes, a mischievous smile. And crucially, she was holding a cat. I saved the picture, cropped it, and sent it to Liam with a casual, "That's me." He loved it. He said I was beautiful. He was even more interested now. We kept talking. Every day. For hours. The more we talked, the deeper I dug myself into this hole. I created a whole fake life for Sarah. I said I was a freelance photographer, traveling the world and taking pictures of wildlife. I stole photos from National Geographic's website and posted them on a fake Instagram account I created. I even fabricated stories about my adventures, battling crocodiles in the Everglades, climbing mountains in Nepal. Liam was enthralled. He was also falling in love. He told me he'd never met anyone like me. He said he felt like we were soulmates. And honestly, I was falling for him too. Even though it was based on a lie. Even though I knew it was wrong. There was something about Liam's vulnerability, his genuine kindness, that resonated with me. I enjoyed talking to him, even as I felt the guilt gnawing at my insides. I knew I had to end it, but I couldn't. I was addicted to the attention, the validation, the feeling of being someone special. Months went by. The pressure was building. Liam wanted to meet. He kept suggesting dates, road trips, anything to bridge the distance. I kept deflecting, making excuses. My photography assignments were always in remote locations, far away from him. I even invented a sick grandmother who needed constant care. He was incredibly understanding, which only made me feel worse. One day, he dropped a bombshell. He'd saved up enough money to come visit me. He'd booked a flight to my fake city and reserved a hotel room. He was coming in 2 weeks. I was paralyzed with fear. This was it, the moment of truth. I couldn't keep lying, but I couldn't bear to lose him. I considered confessing everything, telling him the truth about Sarah, about me. But the fear of rejection, of ruining everything, was too overwhelming. Instead, I did something even more stupid. I decided to become Sarah. I spent the next 2 weeks transforming myself. I dyed my hair dark brown. I bought colored contacts to make my eyes look green. I studied Sarah's pictures obsessively, trying to mimic her expressions, her mannerisms, her style. I even got a temporary tattoo in the same place as the girl in the picture. I knew it was insane. I knew it was wrong. But I was desperate. I convinced myself that if I could just pull it off for a few days, I could win him over. He'd fall in love with the real me, even if I looked a little different. I met him at the airport. He was even more handsome in person, tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. He rushed towards me, pulling me into a tight hug. "Sarah," he said, his voice full of emotion, "it's so good to finally meet you." I managed a shaky smile. "It's good to meet you too, Liam." For the first few hours, it was okay. He was so happy, so excited to be with me. We went to dinner, walked around the city, and talked for hours. I tried to stay in character, answering his questions about my life as Sarah, improvising details to keep the lie going. But it was exhausting, and I could tell he was starting to notice things. My accent was different from what he'd expected. My knowledge of photography was surprisingly limited, and I kept slipping up, revealing details about my real life that didn't fit with the Sarah persona. He was too polite to say anything, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. That night, back at his hotel room, things fell apart. He started asking me direct questions, questions I couldn't answer without revealing the truth. He asked about my family, my friends, my childhood. I stumbled, hesitated, and contradicted myself. Finally, he stopped me. "Sarah," he said, his voice quiet, "something's not right. You're not who you say you are you?" I burst into tears. I couldn't lie anymore. I confessed everything. About the gas station job, the boredom, the fake profile, the stolen pictures. I told him how I'd fallen for him, how I'd been too scared to be myself, how I tried to become the person he wanted me to be. He listened in silence, his face a mixture of shock, hurt, and anger. When I finished, he just stared at me for a long time. Then he stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "I don't understand," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Why? Why would you do this?" I didn't have a good answer. I just mumbled something about being insecure and wanting to be loved. He turned back to me, his eyes filled with disappointment. "I did love you," he said. "I love the person I thought you were. But you're not her. You're a liar." He asked me to leave. I walked out of that hotel room, feeling like the scum of the earth. I'd hurt him deeply. I'd betrayed his trust. I'd destroyed something beautiful with my lies. He blocked me on all social media. I never heard from him again. That was 5 years ago. I've never catfished anyone since. I learned my lesson, the hard way. But the guilt still lingers. I think about Liam often. I wonder if he ever found someone who was real, someone who loved him for who he was. I hope he did. As for me, I'm still trying to figure out who I am. It's been a long journey, but at least now I'm trying to be honest, with myself and with others. This confession is part of that process, a way to finally acknowledge the truth, to take responsibility for my actions, and to hopefully, one day, forgive myself. But I'll always be the girl who became Sarah and broke Liam's heart, and that's a burden I'll carry for the rest of my life. I've been hiding something for nearly 7 years now, something that makes my skin crawl every time I think about it. It all started with a profile picture. A girl, maybe 22, with long, sun-streaked blonde hair and eyes the color of the summer sky, smiling against the backdrop of what looked like a Malibu sunset. Sunshine Sarah 89. Her handle read. I was 24, freshly heartbroken after a messy breakup, and desperately seeking some kind of connection, some kind of validation in the cold, anonymous landscape of online dating. So I swiped right. Sarah and I matched almost instantly. Her opening message was simple, playful. Hey there. Your profile says you're a musician. Tell me more. And just like that, I was hooked. We started messaging back and forth constantly. She was witty, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. We talked about my band, my dreams of making it big, my favorite albums. She shared her own aspirations, wanting to be a photographer, travel the world, maybe open a small art gallery someday. It felt like we were kindred spirits, two lost souls, finding each other in the digital wilderness. Within a week, we moved from the dating app to texting. Soon, we were talking on the phone every night, sometimes for hours. Sarah had this infectious laugh that could make even the most mundane story sound hilarious. She listened intently when I talked about my insecurities, my fears, my past. She was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. Beautiful, intelligent, supportive, and seemingly head over heels for me. There was just one problem. We never met in person. I suggested it early on, of course. We should grab coffee, I said, or maybe catch a movie. But Sarah always had an excuse. She was busy with work. She was traveling to visit family. She wasn't feeling well. At first, I was understanding. I figured she was just cautious, maybe a little shy. But as the weeks turned into months, her reluctance to meet became increasingly frustrating. I started to get suspicious. I confronted her about it. Sarah, I really like you, I said during one of our late-night phone calls. But I can't keep doing this if we're never going to meet. It feels like you're hiding something. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I am, she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. It's complicated. She went on to explain that she had a rare medical condition that made her extremely self-conscious about her appearance. She was worried I wouldn't be attracted to her if I saw her in person. It was a long, elaborate story, filled with medical jargon and emotional vulnerability. And against my better judgment, I believed it. I felt terrible for her. I told her that her appearance didn't matter to me, that I cared about her personality, her mind, her heart. I told her I would be patient, that I would wait until she was ready. And I did. We continued our relationship online, building an intense emotional connection without ever laying eyes on each other. We exchanged photos, or rather, she exchanged photos. I sent her plenty of pictures of myself, but she only sent a handful, always carefully posed and filtered. I never saw her in natural light, never saw her without makeup, but I convinced myself that it was okay. That love was about more than just physical attraction. This went on for 2 years. 2 years of late-night phone calls, heartfelt text messages, and carefully curated online interactions. 2 years of excuses and half-truths. 2 years of slowly eroding my own self-respect. Then, one day, I received a message from an unknown number. I think you should know the truth about Sarah. It read. Attached was a link to a social media profile. The profile belonged to a woman named Michael. He was a man in his late 30s, with a receding hairline, a slight paunch, and the same piercing blue eyes as Sunshine Sarah 89. The profile was filled with pictures of Michael, his friends, his family, his ordinary, unremarkable life. It took me a while to process what I was seeing. The beautiful blonde girl, the aspiring photographer, the woman I had fallen in love with, she was a lie. A complete fabrication. Michael had created this elaborate persona to catfish me, to manipulate me, to extract emotional validation from me. I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. Disbelief, anger, betrayal, and a profound sense of humiliation. I called Sarah, my hand shaking as I dialed her number. She answered on the third ring, her voice as sweet and innocent as ever. Hey baby, she said. How was your day? Who the hell is Michael? I spat out, my voice trembling with rage. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then a nervous laugh. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. Don't lie to me, I screamed. I know everything. I saw the profile. I know you're not Sarah. You're Michael. She hung up. I tried calling her back, but my number was blocked. I tried messaging her on the dating app, but my account had been blocked there too. She had vanished, leaving me with nothing but a shattered heart and a mountain of unanswered questions. I spent the next few days in a daze, replaying every conversation, every text message, every phone call in my head, searching for clues I had missed, red flags I had ignored. I realized that there were so many things that didn't add up, so many inconsistencies in her stories. But I had been so blinded by my own loneliness, so desperate for connection, that I had chosen to believe the lie. I felt like an idiot, a gullible, pathetic idiot. After a few weeks, the anger started to subside, replaced by a deep, gnawing sadness. I mourned the loss of Sarah, the woman I thought I knew, even though she had never existed in the first place. I also mourned the loss of my own innocence, my own naivete. I had learned a harsh lesson about the dangers of online relationships, about the lengths people will go to in order to deceive and manipulate others. I wanted to report Michael to the police, but I was too ashamed. The thought of explaining the whole story to a stranger, of admitting how easily I had been duped, was too much to bear. So I kept it to myself, bearing the pain and the humiliation deep inside. Over the years, I've tried to move on, to forget about Sarah, to rebuild my trust in others. I've had other relationships, both online and in real life, but I've never been able to shake the feeling that I'm being watched, that someone is lurking in the shadows, waiting to exploit my vulnerability. And that's the secret I've been hiding. The fear that I'll never be able to truly trust anyone again. The fear that I'm still, in some small way, in love with a lie. But what happened next is something that to this day shakes me to my core. About a year after the whole Sarah/Michael debacle, I received a package in the mail. It was a small, unmarked box. Inside, nestled in a bed of tissue paper, was a single photograph. It was a picture of me, taken from across the street, as I was walking my dog in the park. On the back of the photo, scrawled in messy handwriting, was a single word: always. I froze. A cold wave of dread washed over me. This wasn't just a random act of cruelty. This was a deliberate act of stalking, a chilling reminder that Michael was still out there, watching me, maybe even closer than I thought. I immediately called the police, finally overcoming my shame and telling them the whole story. They took the threat seriously, launching an investigation and advising me to take extra precautions. I installed security cameras around my apartment, changed my phone number, and avoided going out alone at night. For months, I lived in a state of constant anxiety, jumping at every shadow, afraid to answer the phone. The police eventually tracked down Michael, but they couldn't arrest him for stalking. They said there wasn't enough evidence to prove that he had sent a photograph, and even if they could, the legal penalties for online harassment were minimal. They issued him a warning and told him to stay away from me. But I knew that a piece of paper wouldn't stop someone who was clearly obsessed. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I spent weeks researching Michael, digging through his online presence, trying to understand what motivated him. I learned that he was a lonely, insecure man who had been bullied and rejected his entire life. He used catfishing as a way to escape his own reality, to create a fantasy world where he was loved and desired. I knew that confronting him wouldn't solve anything, but I couldn't just sit back and wait for him to strike again. I needed to send him a message, to let him know that I wasn't afraid of him. One night, I drove to his house, a small, run-down bungalow on the outskirts of town. I parked down the street and walked to his front door, my heart pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath and knocked. He opened the door, his eyes widening in surprise when he saw me. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice trembling. I didn't say anything. I just stared at him, my eyes filled with anger and contempt. Then, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a photograph. It was a picture of him, taken from his own social media profile. I had printed it out and written a single word on the back: forgotten. I handed him the photo and walked away, leaving him standing there, speechless, in the doorway of his lonely house. I never heard from Michael again, but the experience changed me forever. I learned that even in the seemingly anonymous world of the internet, actions have consequences. I learned that trust is a fragile thing, easily broken and hard to repair. And I learned that sometimes the only way to confront your demons is to face them head-on, to show them that you're not afraid. But the scar still remains. Hey guys, if you made it this far in the video, thank you. Your support means a lot to the team. Comment down below to our team if you made it this far. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell to be the first to watch future videos. Thank you and see you soon.